Well, I see we already have people jumping in, so they didn't slow down because the link changed. So, I wanna welcome our people in quickly. It'll be recorded anyway. And I wanna tell our friends who are joining in that, when I bring in friends here, you know, m pretty much they're at the upper echelon of people that I respect, but, you're not gonna meet much of anybody who has guided what I've done in Ukraine better than tonight's guest, Simon Ostrovsky. Um, Simon, your series years ago for Vice, Russian Roulette, set the stage for a lot of stuff I've done for 4 years, and,
Oh,
we
really?
don't
How
have
so?
well, because, I don't like the selfie journalism that's going on, number 1, and yet
My
yours
my
was
my most
yours
successful film was called Selfie Soldiers. What are you talking
exactly. And yours, I always would laugh with people. I say, "I'll never do anything like that. You wanna see." "Well, Simon is the only one who can do that." "Who?" "Well, Simon was," and I would point them to your cover, just said, what he was doing was different. You were directly in the spot, you were properly, confrontational when necessary in those moments, you were, taking risks to be where the real action happened. And now we have a world of disinformation where no one remembers what happens in 2014. And we can always go back to those moments where you were literally there with the cameras, with those soldiers and those sailors taking over bases, or the evolution of the Maidan. And I also would just want to ask that, Victoria Nuland ever give you cookies, so, since that became the later story about Maidan, but ha tell our friends how you got into this story here in Ukraine, if you don't mind. And then more importantly, I wanna go to what you said in your video the other day about where we're at with news and why I think it's so great you're on Substack.
Yeah, so I mean, today I'm a PBS NewsHour special correspondent, and for the most part, I cover Ukraine for them. I travel to Ukraine about 4 or 5 times a year, but I also do other stories in Eastern Europe and around the world, and even domestically when I get the opportunity. But I wanted to start my own channel on Substack as well as on YouTube because I feel that a lot of the discourse today that's online is basically not reporting at all. It is
Mm,
discourse. And it's kind of what we're hearing from the people who pop up on our telephone screens and even the people who pop up on the television studios on channels like CNN are providing us with like a low fidelity version of reality because it's, you know, 3 or 4 pieces of content away from the events that it describes. And what I mean
right,
by that is like maybe, a genuine reporter from the New York Times wrote a story. Um, Somebody talked about that story on CNN, then somebody talked about that conversation about that story on CNN on their personal channel, and then a fourth person is now commenting on it, and that's what you are reading. And so by the
right,
time you're reading that comment, the information that you're taking in is so far removed from the events that happen that it really almost has nothing to do with the thing that you're discussing. You're lucky if you're even discussing the correct thing, you know?
right,
And at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with people sharing their opinions online
mhm,
or on TV or wherever that may be.
mhm,
But as a journalist whose bread and butter is going places and seeing things for myself and
mhm,
reporting them directly to the viewer as I saw them without all those in betweens, that we just talked about,
mm,
um, it's incredibly hard to compete just on a financial level,
yeah,
with the people who are sitting at home or sitting in a studio and not traveling anywhere, and essentially sharing their opinion about a thing that didn't even happen because it's just a thing that was reported by somebody else or commented on by somebody else. So these people in the current attention economy of the internet, um, all of the earnings that they get on Substack or whether they're on, Facebook or YouTube and monetizing there, or whether they're getting donations, all that money that they're getting is profit because it didn't
yeah,
cost them anything to see a report on TV. and then talk to you about what they think about it.
Right.
My job involves buying a plane ticket, booking a hotel, getting a fixer when appropriate, i.e., a local producer who can help me open doors or translate for me, depending on what country I'm in.
Mhm.
If stuff is really hairy, sometimes you even have to get a security team. I mean, there's 1,000 different kinds of situations. All of them involve paying for the reporting when you're doing on the ground work. And so I'm asking, I've moved to Substack, as you mentioned, and I'm
Mhm.
asking people to donate to that Substack. But I'm investing that money into my YouTube channel, which I've also just started contributing to. And my philosophy is that we need to be sending more people to the places um, where the events are happening that they're describing or that they're talking about. And you're already in Ukraine. So,
Yeah.
you see what's happening there every day. Uh, but
And I make decisions on coverage based on finances all the time. I tell this audience flat out, the ability to do a better job is directly in the hands of those who support what we do. And then I had to even flip it even further. The more I thought about it, Olivia said, well, actually, what you're really doing is you're empowering me to help the people in front of me to tell you what they're going through. Well, in fact, it just keeps evolving from that because we're really here. And the more this audience, and that's why I like about Substack, is that this audience sees that and they see, for instance, if they get a live feed from us on the street with people who don't speak English and I'm, walking through and being able to kind of bridge that gap, this audience loves it. I mean, they want that, So, and I don't see it as donation. I see it as their investment. Their subscriptions are investments. So yeah, and it's
no,
necessary.
definitely. I mean, maybe I used the wrong term. It's an investment into
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
quality information, into the high fidelity information, not
yeah.
the lo-fi where it's the echo of the echo of the echo. And maybe it's
Right.
fun and entertaining, and often it is, and that's why it gets the views. But
There are some
it
outlets
doesn't have
that
a lot to
literally
do with reality.
there's some outlets that I feel like that the guy or lady sits there and just reads Twitter and said, "Well, today," and they pick random accounts who say things about Trump or something in the world. And
Area. Proceed to the nearest shelter. Attention.
this is how we live, by the way.
Threat in your area.
Um,
I hate that word,
so
Brain. I hate that so
when,
much.
when that's what we're competing against to get real information out to people. When and you do this so well. This is why I love that you're here saying this. Your work is invaluable. Your what you did 14 years ago, what are we at now? 12 years ago is invaluable. I keep a annotated copy of all the segments you did because I went through
That's terrible.
when I got here and just I needed to see those as markers because I could trust you. And one of the things I tell these viewers is if I haven't earned your trust with my footage, I need to do a better job because that's your information chain right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 12 years ago, I was doing a series called Russian Roulette on Vice News, and people have told me it was pretty groundbreaking. We kind of invented it as we went along because we created a new format for video news narrative, which I guess what we ended up getting away with without even sort of planning it was
Mhm.
stepping away. And this again is funny because the format was born out of necessity. I mean,
Mhm.
Vice News was a YouTube project of Vice Media,
Mhm.
and it, it was one of the lowest funded sort of ventures that they had going at the time because they also had Vice on HBO. I think they were filming
Mhm.
the second season or the third season when we started Vice News in Ukraine. And because of the low budget, we kind of had to do things a little slapdash. We could never compete with CNN, which had big teams on the ground, but they also
Mhm.
had to hit deadlines, at 1 o'clock or the 6 o'clock, whenever they were going to go on air. And we didn't have
Yeah.
those deadlines, and that's what our strength was. And so we decided that we were going to go in another direction a little bit, where there wouldn't be like this voiceover voice of God. So we tried to use voiceover as little as possible. I'm not saying we didn't use it at all. Sometimes it was
Sure.
very difficult to stitch a narrative together without voiceover, but we
Mhm.
didn't lean on it. And a lot of times I would queue up an event that I was reporting on, say it was a protest outside of a Ukrainian military base,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I would do several versions of a stand-up because I didn't know what was gonna happen next, but I needed
Right,
the
right,
stand-up to lead into it because I wasn't gonna use voiceover later after I already knew what happened, and then the ones
right,
that didn't transpire, I would cut, and they would go on the cutting room floor, and then I'd use the stand-up that I did, in situ, um, that actually, ended up occurring. So we had this we thought that gave it, like, this sort of more personal, you're just like talking to a friend rather than
right,
and telling them like, look what's happening, this is crazy, rather than speaking to them as though you're the authority. Like, let your eyes be the authority. We're going to show
right,
you
right.
what's happening here, and then we want the viewer to make the decision for themselves about what they've seen, but we're going to show it to you. We're not going to tell you necessarily what conclusions to draw from it. And I think people appreciated that. I've carried that with me, in this decade. Although Vice has now gone bankrupt, and
Yeah, sadly.
there's a sort of zombie version of Vice now that's more like a podcast that's been
Right.
resold, and I think I don't even know who owns it anymore, but it's a shadow of its former self. But I've tried to hold on to that ethos
Mhm.
all these years that I just described, and I love the NewsHour. They've given me lots of opportunities at PBS to do reporting from all around the world. But the one thing that they haven't given me is the ability for me to sort of be myself and exercise my personality in my stories. And so that's why I opened up this YouTube channel in conjunction with the Substack, is that so I can go back to that kind of, what I feel is authentic reporting that I used to
Amen.
be able to do on the daily. So,
Yeah, and I found this. I mean, I've been here for 4 years filming, but I always turn the cameras out, and there were beautiful arguments, not negative ones, but arguments about whether I should be in front of the camera. I said, "No, no, no, I don't do that, man. I just don't." Simon could do that, but I don't do that. And then we had the blackouts this season, and I had Ukrainians writing me say, "Hey, can you at least in the neighborhood tell us what's happening?" Next thing I know, I'm on the street, and it was exactly as you described it, like talking to a friend. It was locked on Facebook, which means only my YouTube friends, I mean, my Facebook friends and Ukrainian friends would see it. And then they were like, "Man, please, can you share that a little bit better? Because I have some more Ukrainian friends who wanna see it." Yeah, I mean, I'm really not into being on camera, but yeah, sure, no problem. And then I was out there every day doing it, and then the neighbors were walking up. "Oh, дякуємо, thank you for supporting." Dude, I live here. And all of a sudden the wall just evaporated, and I was like, "Okay, let's just do it." And I jumped on Substack at that point and said, "You know what? I think after 4 years, I've earned a chance to be on front of the camera and say, 'Okay, now I'll tell you what I see.'" I always felt like the camera told you enough. The camera being in Bucha, the camera being in Izum, the camera being in Kherson told you the story.
mhm,
But the reality is people wanna see someone in that frame they relate to. I fought that, and I lost that argument. I mean, I'm okay to lose the argument because if people think that I feel like I'm there in Ukraine when I see this American sounding voice that talks back to me, the friend voice, because
yeah,
I watched some of the clips again today with Russian Roulette, and I went, that's what it is. Russian Roulette sounds like someone I know is standing and go, "Hey guys, yeah, so I'm here at this base and these guys," and that's exactly how you present it.
yeah, and I think the other sort of secret for the secret sauce was, um, you know, I always take the proverbial CNN crew that had the deadline at 1 o'clock, and then another one at
Mhm,
3,
mhm,
and then another one at 6 p.m. They couldn't sort of see the story through because they always had to be stepping away to be doing those lives. And
mhm.
I've heard a lot of people say to me, "Man, you were the only guy in Crimea at that time," or "You were the only guy in Eastern Ukraine at that time."
That's right.
Totally untrue.
Yeah,
Complete bullshit. There were
yeah.
so many other journalists there, but they weren't getting through, and they somehow weren't being memorable to the viewer because they were delivering this kind of stolid news package that just sort of like you don't even remember it 5 minutes after you've seen it. And the reason for that is because when an event was transpiring, like again, that protest outside a Ukrainian military base, they would come there, and the MO is get a couple of shots, get some B-roll,
Right.
do a stand up, and then head back to the hotel to edit it all together in time for the broadcast. And what we did was we would arrive, when we saw on Twitter that something was happening somewhere, we would drive there, and then we would just like see how it turns out. We would stay there, you know.
Right.
we we would be there until the end. So we didn't have a deadline to hit. That meant that
Right.
when you were seeing our piece, it might have been a day or two since it actually happened, but it didn't really matter
Right. Right.
because we weren't sort of reporting the news. We were just showing you what happened. And our stories kind of naturally had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mhm.
And viewers really appreciated that because they were seeing what our coverage as sort of as storytelling more than as news reporting. The part one of the story is, hey, we arrived, we're trying to figure out what's happening. Part
Mhm.
two of the
That's right.
story is like, here's what's happening.
Right.
And then part three of the story is, oh man, these guys are being like rushed off the square, or they're being shot at, and everybody's had to disperse. It just got too dangerous for anybody to be here anymore. And
Right.
boom, that's the story. And again, CNN was there. I wasn't the only guy there, but they left 5 hours ago.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, actually, I've, this audience here that's used to me, I've spoon-fed BBC and CNN to the Ukrainian families and audiences here in person plenty of times, basically saying, essentially, they're not here. They come in, they parachute in, tell a story, A block, B block, whatever it's gonna be, and then it's done, and they don't come in and, like, learn what the actual process is, learn the backdrop of many of these complicated stories, and I think, journalism for me is that, I don't like reporting, I like getting into the grit of what's happening in that back context. And, when you have that deadline, yeah, you don't have that ability to really step back and say, "Hey, line producer, yeah, we're not ready yet. No, it's not. It's like a 25% story now, bro. I'd rather come back tomorrow and give you a 65% story. Can we do that? Yeah,
yeah.
cool. I'll see you tomorrow." So,
And nowadays, even that format of television reporting is becoming fewer and far between, because I
yeah.
worked at CNN for a year in 2018, and I sort of
Okay.
I learned the kind of rhythm of network reporting while I was there, and
Right.
I didn't really watch that much of it before I went there, and I realized that these studio shows, they'll have like
I
Anderson.
lost your audio. Let's see. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Can't hear you.
No?
Can you
I
guys
don't
hear,
Nothing
Simon? I
changed
just
on
lost
my
his audio.
end.
Let's see here.
Um,
There we go. I got you. I can hear you.
you got me back? Okay.
It toggled in and out. Let's see.
Yeah. So what what
The
I what I
microphone?
was what I was saying was that, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I hear you now. It's popping in and out. Yes, we can hear him. Okay.
Okay. So they have these studio shows, and you'll have Anderson, Cooper, and then you'll have Wolf Blitzer, and then you'll have, another one, and each of them have an hour, or I don't remember, 45 minutes or something.
Right.
They're all discussing the same story of the day. There's not even the reporter on the ground that I was talking about before, the one who at least came to the protest and filmed the B-roll,
Right. Right.
and like did the stand up and went back to the hotel. He's not even there anymore. It's just the people in the studio. It's like that is the cheapest form of television news journalism there is. That's why they
Right.
do it. It costs them nothing to sit in a studio and invite guests. Like maybe they pay the taxi of the guy who they invited into the studio, if that,
Right. Right.
So that's
It's the
really,
overhead of all the lights and the electricity, but not in the labor on the street.
yeah. And again, they're discussing, a New York Times investigation that was really expensive to pull off. That's, somebody had to spend 3 weeks paying some guy to be somewhere to do that investigation, paying his salary and his healthcare and his benefits, to actually get that information. And now they're just sitting in the studio and like, bopping it back and forth to each other,
Right.
telling us it's parsing it for us, telling us what it's supposed to mean. And then the next hour, the next studio host comes on and does the same thing. It costs them nothing. And and again, this is why I created the Substack, and this is why I created the YouTube channel, because I want people to invest in the journalism that they're getting, and I want to be able to go out there and to do the
Exactly.
stories that I want to do. So my channel is called at S Ostrovsky. But if you search, Substack Simon Ostrovsky or YouTube Simon Ostrovsky, you'll find it. And I'm like, please subscribe, especially on the YouTube, because I'm trying to grow my numbers there. And on Substack, if you can afford to do the paid subscription, if not, do the free subscription. That really helps too in getting the word out. Um,
Yeah.
and also thanks to you, Chris, because you're really helping me get the word out right now. So I'm grateful.
Well, I'm very serious, man, that, I don't necessarily automatically think of the people who put it in order for me, but when I think of, well, how did I decide to take this path this way? I came from Pacifica Radio, so Pacifica is a lot like Vice. We have an attitude problem. We think we know everything about news. But we didn't operate the same way as everyone else did. We literally we were proud to stand next to CNN at certain things and go, look, look at all that gear over there. Yeah, man, I'm going to do that with $1,500 in laptop. How much that van cost you? So we loved getting on a shoestring budget, but we could dive into our stories. We were allowed to be specialists at what we did, and we encouraged that, and it wasn't that formula. And also we were really interested in telling the story of people that needed someone to tell that story. So it was a completely inverted model than the one that's like, oh, I can get a lot of views for that story and people will watch for that story so I can sell advertisement. The original Rupert Murdoch model that shut down Don McClellan, the great war photographer, who wanted to go to the Falklands, and Rupert Murdoch with Sunday Times went, I've got to sell refrigerators, bro. And that's where we're at now with corporate media. They don't really want to tell the deep dive stories. It's not good for the good ratings. They need quick, easily digestible headline munchers, and we have to do this stuff here.
And
And I
also,
want everyone to be
no,
signing up.
there's no incentive for them to. If
Exactly.
if the newspapers are paying actual investigative journalists to go out there and do the legwork, and all they have to do is talk about it in their studio, and it's so much cheaper, why wouldn't they? You know?
So lay out for the viewers, lay out just a theoretical project that you say, okay, let me give you a vision of what I'd like to be doing that you guys could help me do. And because I do that with
Oh yeah,
everyone here,
totally.
I show them like, we got these Marines that came home from captivity. Okay, I've already got this much footage. All I need to do is go get this much, and then we got this much done. And I'm gonna go next week. If you can help me out, you guys know where the tabs are. Anyway, let's keep talking about the topics tonight. And a few people will come in and subscribe, or they'll throw a little
Well,
bit money in
so
the coffer, and we'll
my
go
most
film.
my most recent piece that I put up on YouTube. It's actually a 23-minute long interview I shot in Kiev with a so-called verifier from this marketplace that they have here in Ukraine for
Mhm.
weapons. It's like
Oh, open Tinder, yeah,
it's like an Amazon for weapons, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and the verifier. Do you remember a few years ago there was a documentary about you know people they hire in the Philippines for Facebook to like go through all the pictures that people are publishing to make sure that there's no nudity
Yeah, 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 yeah.
or like
Right, right,
or violence or something. I watched this
right.
documentary. It was incredible because these people were traumatized doing this job in the Philippines, watching everybody's dirt, and and
Yeah,
and seeing it for themselves, and they just, they would kind of lose their minds doing that work. Well, this verifier does something similar for the Brave One marketplace in Ukraine.
right,
He watches all the headcam footage and the drone footage that soldiers are sending Brave One so that he can verify that their kills actually happened, so that he
right.
can then award points to them, which they then trade for weapons and other gear on the marketplace. So basically, you used a drone to kill a soldier, a Russian soldier. That's worth 12 points. Uh, this guy who went by the name Andrei looks at the video. He says, "Yep, you killed a Russian soldier. Here's your 12 points. You then go and trade those 12 points for another drone to use on another Russian soldier."
Right.
Which and no one is doing that, and Ukraine is the first country to. It's kind of bonkers. I mean, honestly, and
Yeah.
and it's working because the difference between what the army gives you and what you can buy, you can choose your preferred weapon. And
That's right.
and the Brave One marketplace, and by extension the Ukrainian government, is learning from these soldiers, finding out what the best and most effective weapons are, because they see the ones that they prefer and the ones that they order versus the ones that they're mass shipping out and giving everybody. And so
I saw this fight between Abrams and Bradleys where, everyone in the West was obsessed about whether we had given enough Abrams, and that was an important discussion. But every person I talked to here said, "Give us a lot more Bradleys." Yeah, we love to fight with Bradleys. And that's to that same issue. In other words, they know what they wanna fight with. They know what they like to apply on the battlefield, and even now they're like, "Bradleys, yeah, no, give me 6 FPVs. I'll take that Bradley out, and then I'll take a" so it's that open Tinder marketplace is huge, and we were just filming in Mykolaiv with intercept teams with some
I
young
think
guys
you
in
were
this.
saying Tinder, like the dating app, and I was like, it's not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Tinder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they, in Mykolaiv, there was this, young team of interceptors out in this middle of this field, just their job overnight is just watch for that one Shahed that might fly by. And we said, "What do you like about what's happening now?" And they exactly mentioned that marketplace. They said, "If I can get one of those guys, I can add to my team's toolkit." And that's a great energy to hear from people who are tired from this war.
And it was hard to score that interview, because for one thing, they don't really want to be sharing what the point values are, because they don't want to be
Right, right,
they don't want the world to know what their battlefield priorities are. So
right.
they gave me a sort of lower end of the spectrum ranking for how many points you get for killing a soldier, how many points you
Mhm.
get for capturing a soldier. And that's an interesting one. I wonder if you can guess whether you get more for capturing a Russian soldier or killing one. What do you think?
Capturing is always useful because you got the exchange bin.
That's it. But how much more do you think they give it?
4 to 5 times?
10 times more.
10 times, okay, yeah, 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 that would make sense, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? But they want to get their
Yeah,
guys back from Russia. So they want
that's
to.
it, and that's my number 1 specialty is our POWs, so the exchange fund is the gold mine, and it's changed how the guys on the battlefield in that first year, no less, because I have guys I talked to in that first year that says, "Man, you wanna slap that bitch up inside the front, but, the thing is, what I can do by having him, especially if I put him on the phone with his mom," and all that higher level stuff after me chasing Cheney over to torture is just mind-blowing to watch it happen in real time with guys who hold the bar so much higher for an objective, like you just said, where the end game is a higher return rate for their defenders. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
So yeah, they're finding out what their soldiers want to use, and how their soldiers can be more effective through this system. And that's my latest piece of content that's on there. So you should go there and watch it. I know
Amen.
a lot of YouTube heads have the patience for a 23-minute long interview, and that's again something that I
I
can't do
know.
on the news hour. So I can't.
The argument about YouTube, Sean Penner and I talk about this a lot. We're just confounded at we have these good conversations, and then the thing that makes everyone, or the thing that draws viewers, are the 2-minute, 3-minute clips because they're short, pithy thoughts about something in the world, and that deep thought just kind of doesn't. It's a little bit harder to get to long form. But I want the audience to also hear about what you had to go through. I know the answer to this, but I want the audience to hear from you to get that interview, to get that scheduled, to have all that arranged and come together, and why that's such a stressful thing when you're trying to make a documentary in war. We're not talking about just trying to have an interview. I'm going to talk to this musician who happens to have time on Thursday.
Yeah.
We're talking about war with accreditation issues and timing, and maybe they don't really want to talk today. And so walk that out for them.
Yeah, I mean, with this story in particular, it just took a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of trust building that needed to happen.
Mhm.
They needed to feel out who we were and look at the previous reporting that we'd done. There were like certain things that they wanted to talk over before letting us speak to their verifier, and they just had a lot of sort of security concerns and about like where it was going to be shot. So we made sure that we shot it in such a way where it was going to be very difficult to see where it was filmed, because we didn't want to make that
Right, right,
target. We certainly don't want to cause harm when we come to do a story and then uh, end up getting somebody hurt. So,
right.
um, you know, all of that took a lot of time, and some pundit
And what
might.
about this part, though? One of the big if you don't mind, what
Oh
about
yeah,
this
yeah.
part? Yeah, a huge part of what to get it done. Yeah,
Well, first of all, it takes ages to get to Ukraine. I mean, it's a 11-hour flight to Warsaw, and then it's a 13-hour train from Warsaw to Kiev, and then you're paying for hotels when you get to Kiev, and then
right,
you have a driver that you're paying to move you and your camera crew around with all of your equipment, and obviously you're paying for everybody's meals, and
right,
there's phone costs. I don't know. I can't think of everything off the. Oh, and I mean, I'm paying the camera crew as well, right?
right, right.
So, and the producer. So it's just like it's a lot of money that goes out the door in order to produce something that looks relatively simple, and a lot of time goes into it as well. I mean, just
Yeah,
the getting to Ukraine part, it's like a couple of days. So it's not like even though it's pretty much equidistant to say Prague if you're flying from the United States, it
right.
takes more than twice as long to get there. Just because
6 hours 6 hours is friendly time when it comes to checking in across the border at this time. There are people I
sometimes
know who wait
the
9
line
hours to
the
get
line the
across.
lines at the border can be ridiculous too. And Poland's gotten worse. So I've been looking
Yeah,
for new routes of getting into the country just to feel out what the border situation is, because
right,
it's constantly changing. And just because you came here 2 years ago and you got in fine at one border doesn't mean that border is going to be fine now. And the only way to find out is to bring your body there and walk it through this border checkpoint and see how it is. So yeah, I've done most recently I did Moldova. Um,
right.
and I'm looking at Romania next. just to,
Yeah,
just to see which ones are better than Poland, because the Poles have gotten a lot more restrictive with Ukrainians coming into their country. So when you're leaving Ukraine and you're on your way out of Ukraine and you're going into Poland, the Polish border security are creating these like really long and unnecessary lines for people, because their attitude is changing towards Ukrainians, sadly. Uh, at the beginning of the
yeah,
war, they opened their arms and they were welcoming to all of the Ukrainian refugees, and it was actually incredible. And now various populist politicians are trying to stir historical controversies that the Ukrainians and the Poles have with each other, and bring up the past when we've got a future I mean, a present that we need to deal with.
exactly.
We don't need to be parsing what happened in the World War II era. We need to be
Well,
preventing
I answered it
World War.
decisively. I said, starting from 1340, Poland has been oppressing Ukrainians, and then in 1564, and I just basically laid out the timeline and said, okay, now that we've laid out the actual historical timeline, can we just get into 2026? That's
Yeah,
we talked about this reactionary minority that's happening, but something that was occurring to me during that part is that one other thing with the parachute journalism that's missing is there's sometimes nuances you have to be here to catch that everyone else will miss, and you go, "Wait, wait, wait, I think you guys, man, y'all just travel too much." What you're missing in this story is, and it's some ingredient you have to be here a lot, and you have that sensibility about this country. These little things that if you're not here enough, you're not gonna catch it. Um, tensions, between East and West, like, again, watching some of your footage from 12 years ago, when I hear people say, "Well, that's the thing, we're not like that Western Ukraine," and Now I've lived here a long time. I've been in freshly deoccupied Kharkiv, and they're like, "Hey, no, we love the West. We're cool now." So, and I'll never forget the time I filmed that. It was all it said in Russian, but when I filmed it, because I thought of those interviews where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're so not like the people over there in Lviv, those crazy people in Lviv," and now it's like, "No, no, 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 we're cool." And you have to live here to really get all of those nuances, or the battles between Zaluzhny and Zelensky, or now Fedorov and Zelensky. If you're not here, the outlines you'll get online will dominate everything. And inside that we live here, we go, that is not what's happening here, guys.
Well, I mean, a big part of what I think journalists do and should do is parsing that information for their viewers, because sometimes a lot of those details aren't really necessary. I mean, I need to understand all of that in order to tell a broader story.
Right,
But
right,
I don't want to overload my viewers with the details that aren't necessarily going to help their understanding.
right,
Um, so, but there's a lot of, behind the scenes stuff that you need to understand in order for you to be able to make a broad statement that is
right,
correct. How
right,
did I get to that statement? I got to that statement by covering this story for 1.5 decades.
right.
And so I can make these sweeping statements now because I know them to be true, because I've been swimming in this stuff for so many years. um but
That's why I told this audience last night. We were live with Sean Penner, and I said, "Guys, I've got you the best, the OG himself. You're not gonna get anyone better than Simon Ostrovsky. You set a bar. I'm proud of what you did then. I have 100% faith in what you're gonna be doing, forward, and, I want
well,
this audience to get behind you
you're
100%."
very kind. I really appreciate that.
I have an attitude problem, so everyone knows if you cut the grain, it's because you did a good job, and that's why I did it, was because there are a lot of people I like, but I don't think that their coverage helps us. I like who they are. I like that they're talking about Ukraine. I live here. I know their coverage does not help us. That's all.
Well, what are you working on these days?
So we have Defender stories. I'm actually custom filming Olenivka survivor stories. In fact, this studio was just recently rebuilt here in my apartment, just so they can come here at their own timing and sit down. And with one guy, I asked him a total of 3 questions and got 4 hours of commentary. That's how much is stored in these guys that are coming out of captivity. And then second is this. I'm really trying to bridge as many of, or develop a bit of a federation of our good voices like Tom Much and Sean Penner and others who have a very authentic view of what's happening here, and especially because we all have different angles we're good at. We have things we accentuate the other ones may not have, and the more we do that, especially like on Substack, there, without even being in Ukraine, there are other parts of Substack where that's exactly what's happening. The experts have come off of CNN and MSNBC and built this group of voices that this audience wants to see. They don't just want to see one particular talented person. There's like a confederation of stars of experts
This is
and
a great
quality notes.
audience,
Yeah,
by the way,
yeah,
on Substack. I'm like, this is day 3 for me on Substack, so I'm just like
yeah.
learning the ropes and learning where the buttons are. Um,
Right, right, right.
and but also already starting to interact with some of the people who subscribed, and I feel like it's a totally different cadre of
Yeah,
viewers who are much more plugged in, know a lot more, much more invested in trying to change things for the better, and you can feel that right away. So because
yeah.
you go into the YouTube comments and it's like it's just I don't know what's happening in there. I don't.
It's I just have to stir coffee over it. I have to pull out my Negan attitude problem guy, because I've been through 1,600 days of war today. Today is my 1,600 days, and I have to have a sense of humor. So sometimes I just, as we're getting bombed, I go, well, so let's read the YouTube comments.
Oh no.
Victoria Newland bought your cookies, whatever it is, something. But we use it to have a bit of fun, to
Yeah.
talk about what we're seeing in the world and why it matters. Because I do find it aggravating and
It's all these recycled
sad that,
tropes,
yeah,
isn't it? That's what the
Right,
comments are. It's like some trope that's just been recycled to death,
right.
and people just throw it in when they feel like they don't like what they're hearing. I don't know.
Well, my Ukrainian friend gave me the phrase that I love to this day, and everyone hears it here. The voices of the unbombed are always here. Like, oh, the voices on the unbombed, and that just that cut it right there.
yeah,
So every time I say, "Hey guys, yeah, well, the voices of the unbombed this morning said I should just negotiate," or whatever the comments are, and then this audience are like, "Yeah, why would we negotiate?" It's a savvy audience, and they actually ask great questions. And one of the things, as you see, we have live commentary. As we're discussing things, they have feedback, and we don't get that in journalism. And I told people back in Twitter Spaces time, and now here, how many times did someone from New York Times come down and say, "So I wrote this article today, and for the next 40 minutes, we're going to discuss what I come up with." Hey, Tom's just said, "How did I start this article?" Well, Tom, and then have this back and forth. Because when I was in the media center, which we just lost, Ukraine Media Center shut down because of not enough support. Part of the message I've been sharing with this audience, you lose what you don't support, is that I would be in there, yeah, добрый день, меня зовут Christopher, у меня питание про це ситуація, and everything that the audience has been talking about is what's in my head to answer. I already know the situation, but my job is to talk to America, not to talk to Ukrainian community. We have Ukrainians in the room to answer the Ukrainian audience. I'm having to think, what is it Americans or Westerners need to know in my questioning? And if these people don't tell me something in these chatter spaces that we have in these commentaries, then I don't really know what the audience wants. And you're a legacy journalist guy. We never had feedback 15 to 20 years ago unless it was letters to the editor or someone was screaming us in the street,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So, well, brother, man, I know you got a lot of work to do, and I'll tell you what, we're gonna have you on as often as you've got time. But also, I know you want to do lives, and if you put videos up for this crowd, come on here live sometimes and take some Q&As,
Sure.
and get a sense of what they're finding in your coverage because I've enjoyed this audience a lot. I had
Yeah,
18 followers or subscribers back in November and we're above 2,000 because I just, come on here and I made this my home.
I've loved being on here. This is my first live stream on Substack. I'm glad it was with you. I've been watching the comments scroll here on the screen. People have been really involved. I've been having fun with
Yeah,
those as well. So let's do it again. Let's
you
come
got it,
back,
my man.
and I hope to see you guys on my channel as well, at Ostrovsky, both here on Substack and at YouTube. So we'll keep the conversation going.
And I can tell this audience in front of Simon, NatSig Media, aka Wiretap, whatever resource we use names here for, is 100% behind Simon's work at every level. When you come into country, whatever resource we have to get that job done is on the table. And that's what when you say, what's my mission? Well, that's pretty much one of my missions is to make sure
You're
we can
too
do that
good.
organic stuff.
Too good to me. Thank you.
You got it, man. All
All right,
right.
everybody.
So, Simon, we always have a great way we sign off. It's you've been in Ukraine. We say Slava Ukraini
Героям слава.
і пиздець Російської Федерації.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.